Welcome to our channel. Are you ready to embark on thrilling adventures across the cosmos, encounter mysterious alien civilizations, and explore the unknown depths of space? If so, you've come to the right place. Subscribe and join our community of fellow sci-fi enthusiasts who love diving into epic tales and futuristic explorations. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an exciting new story. We want to hear from you. Leave a comment below sharing your favorite sci-fi moment, or let us know what kind of adventures you'd like to see next. Your feedback helps us create the stories you crave. Now sit back, relax, and prepare to journey beyond the stars as we begin our latest saga.
Where humanity is stronger than they think, the hybrid revolution begins. The searing heat of the desert planet weighed heavily on Max Carter as he completed his final inspection of the day on the massive mining machine, the Titan. Sweat poured down his face, mingling with the fine red dust that coated everything in sight. His shirt stuck to his muscular frame, his hair damp with sweat, and his thick beard was speckled with the same dust that clung to his gear. "Another day in paradise," he muttered, staring at the immense machine before him. The Titan, a massive mobile mining platform, crawled slowly across the barren landscape, grinding through rock and turning it into precious ore. To anyone on this desolate world, the Titan was a marvel of human engineering. Huge, unyielding, and unstoppable. Max examined the machine's systems, confirming everything was in working order, the familiar smell of hydraulic fluid and burnt metal mixing with the dry desert air. Then, a flash of silver caught his attention. Out of place in the rusted, desert-colored surroundings, it gleamed briefly. His heart skipped a beat. There, lying unconscious beneath one of the Titan's massive wheels, was an alien girl. She wasn't human, but her appearance was remarkably similar. Pale skin that seemed to glow, long silver hair splayed out around her like a halo. Her delicate form was pinned beneath the wheel, just moments away from being crushed by the relentless machine. Max froze, a cold shiver running down his spine. The Titan's engines had started, gearing up for the night operation. He didn't have a second to spare. The colossal machine was about to move, and if he didn't act quickly, this alien girl would be yet another casualty of humanity's industrial expansion. With a surge of adrenaline, Max rushed toward her, lifting her into his arms and rolling under the massive tread, feeling the gust of air as the machinery passed inches from them. His heart raced as he held her close, the gravity of the moment sinking in. This wasn't just any alien. This encounter was about to lead to something far bigger than either of them could have imagined. Max gently placed the alien girl on his bed inside the habitat module, his heart still pounding. The temperature inside was a stark contrast to the blistering desert heat outside. His quarters were simple and functional, but clean, furnished with only the basics that any mechanic on this remote mining world would need. The girl, still unconscious, appeared fragile, her otherworldly beauty even more mesmerizing in the cool, artificial light. He gently placed 2 fingers on her wrist, his heart sinking as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. Her pulse was there, steady, but unlike any human heartbeat. It was like a melody, flowing in an unfamiliar rhythm. He felt both relieved and confused. What was she? Who was she? For a moment, he thought about calling for help, reporting the incident to his superiors, but quickly pushed the thought away. He didn't know who she was, what she was, or how they would react. For now, it felt like it was just him and her, alone in a world where no one would understand. Suddenly, her eyes fluttered open, revealing silver irises that gleamed like liquid mercury. Max recoiled, startled, his breath catching in his throat. She gasped, trying to sit up, her movements graceful but sluggish, as though she was still battling the remnants of the near-death experience. "Easy there," Max said softly, placing a hand gently on her shoulder to help her steady herself. His voice was calm, though his heart was still pounding. "You're safe now." She looked up at him, confusion clouding her face before something in her expression shifted. She seemed to study him, her head tilting slightly, as though trying to grasp something deeper than the surface. Her voice, when she spoke, was soft and melodic, like the wind chimes swaying in the breeze. "I understand you," she said, her words clear, but with an exotic accent that Max had never heard before. "The translator works then." Max blinked in surprise, unsure whether she was referring to some sort of device or something else entirely. Yeah, he replied, still processing her words. You're speaking English. She nodded, but her gaze didn't waver from him. I am Ariana Nixel, third daughter of the Celestial Alliance. You are human? Max blinked again, still unsure about the situation he found himself in. Ariana Nixel, third daughter of the Celestial Alliance? He repeated. That's quite a title. She smiled slightly, a curious expression crossing her face. It is customary in my culture. But you risked your life for mine. Why? Max glanced down at her, his gaze softening. You were about to get flattened by that thing, he said, gesturing vaguely toward the massive titan still looming outside the window. It seemed like the right thing to do. She studied him for a moment, her silver eyes gleaming with something Max couldn't quite understand. In all my observations of your species, I've never encountered such a direct reaction. Humans are unpredictable. She paused as if carefully choosing her next words. You are different, and yet you are like us. Max let out a small chuckle, feeling a bit awkward. I guess we're all different in our own ways. Some of us just happen to do the right thing when the time comes. Ariana shifted slightly, brushing her silver hair away from her face. She winced slightly, but Max couldn't tell if it was from the pain of her injuries or something else entirely. You are curious, aren't you? Your species is driven by something that my people cannot understand. You build these massive machines and tear apart worlds for resources, she said, her voice trailing off, her gaze distant. Yet, you risk your life to save a stranger, an alien. Max shrugged, a little sheepish. I don't know about your people, but where I come from, that's just what decent people do. Help out when it's needed. Ariana blinked slowly, as though processing his words. There was a quiet moment between them, one where the silence seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 unspoken questions. Then, with a sigh, she spoke again, her tone softer this time. I'm afraid I have not been entirely truthful with you, she admitted, her voice almost a whisper. I wasn't just observing your mining operations because I was curious about your machines. My people have been watching you for much longer than you know. Max's interest peaked, his eyebrows furrowing. What do you mean? What were you really doing out there, under the Titan? She hesitated, her eyes darting away, but only for a moment. We've been studying your species, Max, she began slowly. Your adaptability, your passion. You build, destroy, and yet you love so deeply. You risk everything for those you care about. We wanted to see it up close. Max stared at her, trying to digest everything she had just said. You mean to tell me you've been spying on us? He asked, incredulity creeping into his voice. Ariana met his gaze directly, her expression unreadable. Not spying, she corrected gently. We've been learning, watching. The Celestial Alliance has never encountered a species like yours. You defy all logic, and yet you grow stronger every day. Max ran a hand through his hair, trying to make sense of it all. So what? You've been observing humanity for how long? Ariana's gaze softened, her voice quiet. Since your first interstellar colonies. But we never imagined what I would find here in this moment. There is something about you, Max Carter, that transcends what I've studied. Something I did not expect. Max was silent for a long moment. He could feel a pull between them, something that went beyond just a strange encounter between two species. What Ariana had said resonated with him, but he didn't fully understand it. Yet, and before he could ask another question, the comm system in his room crackled to life, pulling him back to reality. Max, report to control. We need a full update on the emergency stop. Now. Max let out a sigh, running a hand through his hair. Perfect timing, he muttered. He turned to Ariana, offering her a small smile. Looks like we're not done with this yet. Ariana's lips curved into a faint smile in return, her eyes glimmering with intrigue. No, it seems we are not. As Max made his way toward the door, the weight of the situation settled on him once again. What had started as a simple rescue had turned into something far bigger, something he didn't yet understand. But as Ariana looked at him, her silver eyes full of questions and possibilities, Max knew one thing for sure: nothing would ever be the same. Max stepped into the command room with a sense of unease gnawing at him. The air was thick with tension as the hum of the mining colony's central systems buzzed in the background. He glanced over at his wrist display, confirming that everything was operating within standard parameters. At least, that's what he wanted to believe. He had just saved an alien woman from the clutches of his own mining operation, and now it seemed like the whole station was buzzing with whispers. Graham Ward, the head of security, was already waiting for him at the central terminal. His gruff voice reverberated through the room as Max approached, giving him a sharp nod of acknowledgement. "Max, what the hell happened down there? We got an emergency stop signal from the Titan. What's going on?" Max took a deep breath, trying to maintain his composure, though his heart was racing. "A minor technical issue," he replied, keeping his tone even. "Nothing we couldn't handle." Ward shot him a look that clearly said he wasn't buying it. "A minor issue? You don't stop a Titan-class machine for a minor issue, Carter. We've got protocols for this, you know." Max shifted uncomfortably. He was doing his best to keep Ariana's presence a secret, not wanting anyone to know about the alien he had found until he had more answers. "I said it's handled," Max reiterated. "Everything's under control. I'll file the reports in the morning." Ward narrowed his eyes, clearly not satisfied with Max's explanation. "You better," he muttered, before his attention shifted to a flashing alert on the command terminal. "This could complicate things, though. We're detecting some unusual energy readings coming from the area around your module." Max froze. He'd been hoping to keep things quiet, but now it seemed like someone else was starting to notice. "Energy readings?" he asked, trying to sound casual. Ward didn't look up from his terminal. "Yeah, could be mineral interference or something, but the timing's suspicious. This is right where you were earlier, isn't it?" Max felt a chill run down his spine. His eyes darted toward the habitat module's windows, where Ariana was still resting. "Yeah, like I said, it's probably nothing. Just the mineral dust playing havoc with our equipment." Ward looked skeptical, but he let it go, focusing on the next set of data that started to stream through the terminals. "We'll have a team do a sweep of the area. Just to be sure," he muttered. "Can't afford any more screw-ups." Max barely registered the rest of Ward's words, his mind racing. The energy readings were too precise to be a coincidence. They had to be connected to Ariana in some way, though he had no idea how. But he had to keep her safe. And now, with corporate security getting involved, that task was becoming a lot more difficult. Later that night, after his conversation with Ward had ended, Max returned to his quarters, his mind weighed down with troubling thoughts. Ariana was still lying on the bed, her silver hair spread out around her like a halo, looking impossibly beautiful despite the danger she was in. She hadn't yet fully explained why she had come to this planet, and Max was beginning to feel the heavy burden of the secrecy that loomed between them. As he entered, he found her sitting up, her gaze sharp and piercing as she studied him. "You've been talking to them," she said softly, a mix of curiosity and caution in her voice. Max nodded slowly, stepping closer. "Corporate security's getting suspicious. They're detecting some weird energy spikes, and they've started asking questions." Ariana's eyes narrowed, a slight frown tugging at her lips. "It's not just them, Max," she said, her voice dropping to a more serious tone. "The Vanguard has noticed too." Max's heart skipped a beat. He had heard rumors about the Vanguard, faction of purist aliens who didn't believe humanity should be part of the galactic community. He had always thought of them as distant voices far from the mining colony. But hearing Ariana mention them made him realize just how close they were to everything he was trying to protect. "The Vanguard?" Max asked, his voice barely a whisper. "You mean they know about you?" Ariana nodded, her face troubled. "They know more than I'd like them to, and they don't like what's happening here." Her eyes flicked to the bed where their unborn child, his child, was growing inside her. "They fear it, Max. They fear what you and I represent." Max took a step back, the weight of her words sinking in. The Vanguard weren't just some far-off faction. They were watching, and they would do whatever it took to stop humanity from altering the galactic order. "They're going to come for us, aren't they?" Max's voice was thick with concern. Ariana met his gaze steadily, her silver eyes reflecting 1,000 thoughts. "Yes, but there's something more at stake now, something bigger than us." Max's mind raced as he tried to piece everything together. "What do you mean? What is this bigger thing?" Ariana stood slowly, her movements graceful but determined. "It's our child, Max, the child we're going to have. the first successful genetic bridge between humans and the Celestial Alliance. You and I, we are changing everything. The Vanguard cannot allow this. Max swallowed hard, feeling his chest tighten. So they'll do anything to stop the child? Ariana's expression hardened. They will. They're already making their move. The moment they find us, they'll try to take everything, our lives, our child. They'll erase the evidence of what's happening here. Max clenched his fists, a surge of protective instinct filling him. I won't let them hurt you or our child. Ariana stepped closer, her hand reaching out to touch his arm, sending a subtle wave of energy through him. We must be careful, Max. The Vanguard is ruthless. Their reach extends farther than you can imagine. Max nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. He had to protect her, protect them both. He wouldn't let anyone take what was rightfully theirs. Then we'll fight them. Ariana's lips twitched into a small, knowing smile. We'll do more than fight. We'll make them understand. That's the only way forward now. Max felt the gravity of her words settle over him. They were in this together, and there was no turning back. The stakes had never been higher. The Vanguard was coming, and they had no idea what kind of storm was about to hit them. As the night wore on, Max stayed by Ariana's side, determined to face whatever came next together. The future of both humanity and the Celestial Alliance rested on their shoulders now, and they would not let it slip away. Max spent the next few days on edge, moving between his routine maintenance work and urgent, hushed conversations with Ariana. The shadow of the Vanguard loomed larger with every passing hour, and he could feel the pressure building. Corporate security wasn't the only group watching them anymore. There were whispers of others, far more dangerous, drawing closer to their location. He knew that soon, things would spiral out of control if he didn't act fast. One evening, after another tense conversation with Ward, Max returned to his quarters, hoping for a moment of peace. Ariana was sitting by the small window, looking out at the desolate planet. Her face was calm, but Max could see the subtle tension in her posture. She had always carried herself with an otherworldly grace, but now there was something different about her, something heavy, burdened with the weight of secrets she had yet to fully reveal. Max, Ariana began, her voice quiet but steady. There's something I need to tell you, something I've been keeping from you, something about our child. Max's heart skipped a beat. He had suspected that Ariana was hiding something, something important, but he had never pushed her. The bond between them had been growing, but even now there were layers she had yet to peel away. He took a deep breath, walking over to her. What is it? He asked softly. Ariana turned toward him, her silver eyes reflecting the dim light of the room. Our child, Max, isn't just a child. It's more than that, more than we ever realized. Max felt a knot tighten in his stomach, uncertainty creeping in. What do you mean? What's so special about our baby? She stood slowly, her movements deliberate, as though every word was carefully chosen. You see, Max, this child, our child, represents the first successful genetic fusion between humans and my people. For generations, the Celestial Alliance has tried to bridge the gap between our species. Many attempts have failed. Some have even been disastrous. But your DNA, my DNA, it's creating something entirely new, a new hope for both of our peoples. Max stood frozen, processing the gravity of what she had just said. He had known their relationship was special, that it had significance, but this was something beyond anything he had imagined. So, our child is some kind of miracle? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Ariana nodded, her gaze unwavering as she met his. Yes, in a way. The Celestial Alliance has been trying to create this fusion for centuries, but their scientific methods failed. They couldn't replicate what we've done naturally. But now we have proof that it's possible. Max took a step back, his mind racing with 1,000 questions. But what does that mean? Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why are you telling me this now? Ariana's expression softened, and she stepped closer, her hand reaching out to touch his arm. Because we're running out of time. The Vanguard is aware of what's happening. They know what our child represents, and they will stop at nothing to prevent its birth. They'll see this as an existential threat to their control. They will come for us, Max. They will try to take our child. Max's breath caught in his throat. No, he whispered, his mind racing. They can't. I won't let them. Ariana placed her hand gently over his, her touch warm and comforting. We have to be smart, Max. The Vanguard won't stop unless we show them we're not afraid. They fear what we represent, the potential for change, the possibility of a new future. Humanity is stronger than they think, and our child will be the key to everything. Max looked into her eyes, seeing the depth of her determination and fear, but also something else, a flicker of hope. It was a hope he hadn't realized he needed until now. He squeezed her hand, a promise forming in his chest. We'll protect our family, Ariana, no matter what. Her gaze softened, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. I knew you'd understand. That's why I chose you. Max's heart surged at her words, but before he could speak further, the comm system in the room crackled to life. Max froze, his instincts going on high alert. He knew exactly what this meant. The Vanguard was getting closer. Max, Ward's voice came through the static. We've detected an unauthorized ship approaching the outer perimeter. It's not a standard fleet ship. We think it's from the Vanguard. Max's blood turned to ice. Ariana's face drained of color, and she gripped his arm tighter. They're here, she whispered, her voice barely audible. They're coming for us. Max didn't hesitate. His mind immediately raced through their options, but there was no time to waste. He had to protect Ariana, protect their child. They couldn't let the Vanguard destroy everything they had fought for. We need to move, Max said, his voice steady now, full of resolve. We need to get out of here before they find us. Ariana nodded, but her eyes held something different now, something like a quiet storm. I'm not running, Max. I'll face them head on if I have to. They won't take what's ours. Max felt a fierce pride swell within him. He had always known Ariana was strong, but hearing her say those words gave him a newfound understanding of her courage. Together, they could face anything. The next few hours passed in a blur of hurried preparations. Max gathered up the little gear they had, knowing they would have to leave behind the life they had built. Ariana moved with purpose, her silver hair flashing as she worked quickly, her mind clearly focused on the task ahead. Max kept a close eye on the security feeds, tracking the Vanguard's movements as they drew closer to the colony. He knew that if they were going to make it out alive, they had to act fast. The Vanguard's ship was too close, and the station's security systems wouldn't stand a chance against their advanced technology. Ariana approached him, her face calm but determined. It's time, she said. We need to get to the escape pods. Max nodded, his mind already working through their escape plan, but as they reached the hallway, a loud crash echoed from behind them. The Vanguard had arrived. Max grabbed Ariana's hand, pulling her into a sprint. Go, 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 he shouted, adrenaline surging through his veins. They ran through the maze of corridors, their footsteps echoing in the narrow hallways, until they reached the hangar bay. The escape pods were still intact, but the Vanguard's forces were closing in fast. Ariana's hand tightened around his. We won't make it if we go out there. We need to make them think we're still inside the colony. Max glanced at her, his heart pounding. You've got a plan? She nodded, her eyes blazing with determination. I do. Trust me. With a single motion, Ariana activated the pod's decoy system, sending out a false signal to lead the Vanguard ship in the wrong direction. This should buy us some time, she said. We won't have long, but it's enough. Max kissed her quickly but fiercely before they climbed into the escape pod together, ready to leave everything behind. The time for running was over. Now it was about survival. And no matter what happened, Max knew they would face it together. The escape pod jolted as it launched from the mining colony, the engines kicking into life, turning the narrow, claustrophobic space into their temporary refuge. Max's fingers gripped the controls, his knuckles white, while Ariana sat beside him, her gaze fixed on the small screen, showing the growing distance between them and the Vanguard ship. It's only a matter of time before they realize we're not in the colony, Max muttered, his voice tense. We need to get far enough away before they can track us. Ariana's face was impassive, but her silver eyes betrayed the underlying tension. We have a few minutes, Max. We've fooled them for now, but the Vanguard is relentless. They won't stop hunting us until they have what they want. Max glanced at her, his mind racing. The Vanguard was one of the most powerful factions in the galaxy, an empire driven by fear of change and the desire to preserve their way of life at any cost. And now they were coming for him, for Ariana, for their child, for the impossible fusion that had never been seen before. If the Vanguard succeeded, it would mean the end of everything they had fought for. "We need a plan," Max said, his voice firm despite the fear gnawing at him. "We can't outrun them forever." Ariana nodded, her gaze unwavering. "We need to turn the tables. We have to make the Vanguard think they're in control, give them the illusion that they've won." Max raised an eyebrow. "And how exactly are we supposed to do that?" Ariana's lips curled into a faint smile, but her eyes were serious. "We make them believe we're giving up, surrendering. We let them think they've caught us, but we're going to use that opportunity to strike." Max stared at her, taken aback by her calm confidence. "You're suggesting we let them think we're beaten so we can fight back?" She met his gaze, her expression resolute. "Exactly. If we give them too much of a chase, they'll start getting sloppy. They'll think they have the upper hand, but that's when we'll make our move." Max felt a surge of admiration for her. He had always known Ariana was strong, but this was a different level of cunning, of strategic thinking. She wasn't just reacting to the situation, she was using it to their advantage. "All right," Max said, his resolve hardening. "We do it your way, but we're not taking any chances. We'll make sure we're ready for whatever comes next." As he spoke, the pod's sensors flared to life, a warning signal flashing across the dashboard. Max's heart skipped a beat. "They found us." Ariana's eyes narrowed as she quickly scanned the readouts. "Not yet," she said, her voice calm, though there was a dangerous edge to it. "But they will soon. We need to create a diversion, get them to think we're headed to a different location." Max's mind clicked into gear. The asteroid belt. "If we head there, we can use the terrain to hide our tracks." Ariana gave him a nod of approval. "Good idea. We'll need to make it look like we're trying to hide, not escape." Max adjusted the pod's course, setting a trajectory toward the asteroid belt that lay between them and the Vanguard's pursuit. The belt was dense, full of rocky debris and hidden dangers. If they were lucky, they could slip through undetected. But if they weren't careful, it could become a death trap. The escape pod shook again as they entered the asteroid field, the small ship weaving between massive rocks with terrifying precision. Max's hands moved quickly over the controls, keeping the pod on course while navigating the ever-changing obstacles that loomed around them. "How long do we have?" Max asked, his eyes flicking to Ariana. She was scanning the external readings. "Not much. They're already recalibrating their tracking systems. We'll have to time this perfectly." Max's pulse quickened as a massive asteroid hurtled toward them. He adjusted their trajectory, narrowly missing the rock by inches. The ship rattled with the impact of a close call, but Max didn't flinch. His focus was sharp, his instincts guiding him through the chaos of the asteroid belt. "We're almost there," Ariana said, her voice steady despite the tension. "We need to create a blind spot, a pocket where they can't track us." Max's mind raced. "I've got an idea. Get ready." With a deft motion, Max angled the escape pod toward a large asteroid, positioning it between them and the Vanguard's ship. He activated the pod's cloaking system, hoping the large rock would provide enough cover to mask their signature. The pod sensors flickered, showing a brief moment of interference as they disappeared from the scanners. For a brief moment, Max dared to breathe, hoping the Vanguard ship had been tricked. But the silence in the cockpit was broken by a sudden warning from the pod's systems. They hadn't escaped completely. "They're coming." Ariana's voice was urgent now. Max's heart raced. He checked the readings again. The Vanguard ship was closing in, their weapons powering up. There was no time left. They couldn't keep hiding in the asteroid belt forever. "We have to make them think we're done," Ariana said, her voice calm despite the looming danger. "We need to lure them in close enough, then we'll strike." Max glanced at her, his mind whirring with plans. He could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him, but he trusted Ariana. If anyone could outwit the Vanguard, it was her. He just had to play his part. "All right," Max said, determination in his eyes. "Let's do it." With a final maneuver, Max turned the pod toward the largest asteroid in the belt. He aimed for the surface, preparing to make a crash landing. The Vanguard ship would think they had given up, that they were hiding out of desperation. But in reality, Max and Ariana were preparing for one last stand, one final move to turn the tide in their favor. As the pod descended toward the asteroid, Ariana reached out to Max, her hand steady on his arm. Ready, her silver eyes locking with his. Max nodded, his resolve firm. Always. The escape pod slammed into the surface of the asteroid with a bone-rattling impact, the craft grinding to a halt. For a moment, everything was still. The Vanguard ship hovered above them, unaware of what was about to unfold. Max and Ariana had one chance to make it count. Max's breath came in ragged gasps as he and Ariana scrambled from the wreckage of the escape pod. The craft had crashed hard against the surface of the asteroid, and though the outer shell had held up, the impact was enough to jar them both. The quiet after the crash was eerie, the vastness of the asteroid belt enveloping them in a haunting silence. Max checked their surroundings. The Vanguard ship was still circling, its sensors scanning the area, oblivious to the true trap they were about to walk into. Their time was running out. "We've got maybe a minute before they know we're alive," Max muttered, trying to assess their next move. "We can't keep hiding forever." Ariana nodded, her silver hair shimmering even in the dim light, casting an ethereal glow around her. Despite the circumstances, there was a calm intensity to her, like she already knew what had to be done. "We won't hide, Max. We'll make them think we've given up. When they land, we'll hit them hard." Max looked at her, taking a deep breath. "You're right. We have one shot at this. No turning back." Together, they moved toward the wreckage of the pod, positioning themselves just behind a rocky outcrop. From here, they could watch the Vanguard ship begin its descent toward the asteroid's surface. Max's hands were steady, even though his heart was pounding in his chest. He could feel the weight of Ariana's words, that their child represented a new beginning for both their species. And now, they were fighting not just for their lives, but for everything humanity and the Celestial Alliance could become. Ariana glanced at him, her voice low but resolute. "Stay close, Max. I'll give the signal when it's time." Max nodded. "Let's make it count." The Vanguard ship touched down on the asteroid's surface with a heavy thud, sending tremors through the ground. Max and Ariana remained hidden, watching as the ramp descended, revealing a squad of heavily armored troops, their weapons drawn and scanning for any sign of their targets. They were close now, too close. Ariana's eyes flicked to Max, the corner of her lips curling into a faint smile. "Now," she whispered. With a sudden fluid motion, Ariana stepped forward, her hand raised, her energy rippling out like a wave. A powerful pulse of energy burst from her, lighting up the asteroid's darkened surface. The Vanguard soldiers immediately reacted, weapons charging, but they were too late. The moment they fired, the ground beneath their feet trembled once more. Max's heart surged as he sprang into action, leaping from his hiding spot and charging toward the Vanguard soldiers. He could feel the surge of adrenaline, the raw power of the moment, pushing him forward. Ariana was right behind him, her presence like a ghost as she moved with speed and precision, manipulating the energy around her like it was second nature. The Vanguard soldiers were skilled, but they weren't prepared for this. The first soldier fired his weapon at Max, but he dodged with ease, his movements sharper than he had ever been. He grabbed the soldier's arm, twisting it and disarming him before knocking him out with a well-placed strike. Another soldier tried to flank him, but Ariana was quicker, sending a pulse of energy that knocked him off his feet. Max fought with every ounce of strength he had, moving in sync with Ariana, covering her as she worked her way through the enemy forces. Together, they were unstoppable, their movements fluid and deadly. Each strike, each move, was a calculated effort to push the Vanguard back. But the real battle was still ahead. Max turned just in time to see the archiving forces. Ancient beings, long hidden, materialized from the shadows, their forms shimmering like liquid metal. They were the true power behind the Vanguard, and now they had revealed themselves. "We were wondering when you would show yourselves," Ariana said, her voice steady despite the danger. One of the archivists stepped forward, his voice carrying a harmonic undertone. "You have forced our hand, child of the Celestial Alliance, but it is not you who will shape the future. We will see to it that this union ends here." Max clenched his fists, adrenaline coursing through him. Not today. With a swift motion, Ariana raised her hand, and a blinding pulse of energy shot out, colliding with the archivist's protective shields. The impact sent shockwaves through the asteroid, making the ground beneath them crack open. "We can't let them win, Max," Ariana said, her voice hard, determined. Max nodded, his mind made up. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about showing them that humanity had a place in the galaxy, that they weren't just an anomaly to be erased, but a force to be reckoned with. For a moment, they stood there, the weight of their shared victory and uncertain future settling around them. The distant stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if acknowledging the shift that had just occurred. The war, the battle, it had all led to this point, but they both knew it wasn't over. It was only the beginning of something much bigger, something that would shape the future of both their worlds. Ariana's silver eyes sparkled with a mix of exhaustion and determination as she met Max's gaze. "We've started something, Max. A fire that can't be put out." Max nodded, his heart still pounding with the adrenaline of the fight, but now with a clarity he hadn't felt before. "It's not just about surviving anymore. It's about changing everything, making our mark." She gave a small, knowing smile. "We'll need more than strength to do that. We'll need to keep pushing. The galaxy isn't just going to change because we want it to. It's going to change because we make it." Max's resolve hardened as he looked out into the stars, the vastness of space offering both a sense of awe and an understanding of the task ahead. "I know, but we've proven something today. We've shown them that humanity won't just be swept aside." Ariana's voice softened, a thoughtful edge creeping in. "We've proven that we're capable of more. Together, we can reshape the galaxy." Max reached out, his hand brushing hers again, feeling the strength and certainty in her touch. "And we will. We'll face whatever comes, together." A distant rumble echoed through the asteroid, an ominous reminder of the shifting forces in the galaxy. Ships, both human and alien, began to take form on the horizon, a sign that the galaxy was waking up to what had transpired. And Max and Ariana, side by side, would be at the center of it all, leaders of a new future. As they prepared to leave the asteroid behind and embark on their journey, the engines of their ship hummed to life, and the stars ahead seemed to promise infinite possibilities. No matter the challenges that awaited them, they would meet them head on. The adventure had only just begun, and together they were ready to forge their own path. And as their ship broke through the atmosphere and soared toward the unknown, the future that awaited them was full of potential, untouched, uncharted, and ready for their influence. For a moment, they stood there in silence, the weight of their shared history, their child, and their uncertain future settling between them like an unspoken promise. The stars above seemed to shimmer brighter now, as if recognizing the power of what had just begun. A distant rumble echoed through the asteroid as something else, something more, shifted in the far reaches of space. Ariana's eyes flicked to the horizon, where the faint outline of ships, both human and alien, were beginning to take form. The galaxy was waking up, and they had become its catalyst. Max turned back to her, his gaze steady. "What now?" he asked. Ariana smiled, the kind of smile that held the secrets of galaxies within it. "Now," she said softly, "we build something new, something that honors both of our worlds and creates a future for those who come after us." Max felt a shiver run down his spine. He knew they had only scratched the surface of what lay ahead. The galaxy, with all its infinite possibilities, was out there, waiting, and they would be the ones to shape it. As they prepared to leave the asteroid behind, their ship's engines humming to life, Max took one last look at the vast emptiness around them. The unknown was beckoning, and no matter what challenges lay ahead, he knew one thing for certain: they weren't alone. Together, with their child, and with the galaxy now watching, they would forge their own path. The adventure had only just begun, and as the ship broke through the atmosphere and soared into the unknown, a new dawn began to rise over the stars.